The biggest story of, well, I guess it's the biggest story of the week, or the, macro view anyways. Rafa pulling out of Palm Springs after having pulled out of Australia, after having pulled out of Doha. I was in Vegas, was able to see him play the exhibition Netflix Slam with Carlos Alcaraz. It just felt, and I said to Prakash Armitage when we were sitting next to each other doing it, it just felt like he was having a hard time getting out of that backhand corner consistently. And once Alcaraz found that, he started pounding that side. And where Rafa normally runs through the ball, he has such a strong right hand on that backhand because he does everything else in his life right-handed. It was just having a hard time digging out of that corner when someone bullied him there. And then he just wasn't serving great. He didn't look committed on that side. So I said to Prakash, I think it's 40% chance that he pulls out of Indian Wells. So I wasn't shocked, but there is this gravity of, I think it's probably the last time we see him play in the States in a sanctioned match. I think it's probably the last time that we see him play on a hard court. And the gravity of tennis without him feels more real by the day. And we're going to get to kind of all the tribute that he has so rightfully deserved during this conversation also. But just balls and strikes, am I being too pessimistic about what the future might hold for Rafa?
No, and I think, I think it's a disappointing result. I think at some level, don't you feel like the big league got pulled back a little bit on exos? And, I think Netflix Slam was great. There was a lot to recommend. It was Vegas. It was celebrities. You were there. But I think it did kind of reveal the difference between an exhibition and match play. I had heard after the match, I had two different people text me and say, boy, I don't know if Rafa's going to, he loves Larry Ellison, and that's a factor here. But, boy, I don't know. There was speculation already after the match. And people, I think, the Twitter crowd is sort of, I don't understand. He took the money in Vegas. He beats Carlos Alcaraz, and now he can't show up to play Milos in his first round match in the desert. And I do think one thing this revealed in the last week, big difference between being fit to play an EXO and being fit to play a Masters 1000 event. But yeah, I mean, I think, I was in close contact with the Nadal camp, especially in the summer and fall. And they basically said he doesn't know. And some of it is psychological. And some of it is just his body, the string of injuries. He doesn't want to end this way. He wants to go play, it's the cliche, go out on the shield and go play the French Open one more time and go play the clay. He needs matches, but he also doesn't want to beat himself up. We saw what happened in Australia. This is new terrain for him. And I think, as you say, I don't think we will ever see him on a surface other than clay. I think he's sort of saving up for one last run on the dirt. I don't think he's playing the Olympics. I would be very surprised if he played Wimbledon. It's a pity you don't get to author your own, bodies are fickle, stubborn beasts, his especially. And I just, we all sort of cringed when that press release came, and we also sort of said, not a huge surprise given all the battery of elements here.
Yeah, and a couple things that need to be acknowledged. It's not as if he pitched up to Vegas all of a sudden. He was in Palm Springs for a week before that, not because he cared about playing in an exhibition. It's because he cared about playing in Palm Springs. Got there, was getting used to the surface, trying to go through his paces properly. And listen, because he played in EXO doesn't mean he's ready to go. Does it matter to Rafa Nadal? Is he going to go rip his body apart if his goal is to win one match at Indian Wells? No. Every single decision that he has from this point forward, and probably for the last year and a half, maybe that's a slight stretch, but 15 months has been let's work backwards from the possibility of playing Roland Garros. That didn't work out last year. We didn't see him until the new year started. He wanted to go down to January, get some match reps in, not because he thought he could win the Australian Open. Great if he finds something, but because he wants to work backwards from the French Open. So yes, is it in an EXO? It is very different. Even Alcaraz with an ankle injury, when he was kind of running through, he would get drop shots hit on him, and he would run through them as opposed to doing the acrobatic slide stop, hit the skids, run back in, and do that electric thing. He was kind of running through on the forehand side. That doesn't mean it's not entertaining. So there's a big difference between these guys put on a great show in Vegas. They did everything they had to do to make that entertaining, but that is very different than going through the best players on earth on a stickier surface, right? It's a different surface than there was in Vegas with altitude, yada, yada, yada. So listen, because you can play 2 sets against someone you're friendly with when you know that they're compromised too, doesn't mean they're not apples to apples. And I think it's dumb to treat it that way. Like, obviously, if Rafa gets the benefit of the doubt, if he would have been healthy, he didn't come over just for an exhibition. He has proven that he gets the benefit out. He's not going to say, I'm going to play Indian Wells if he's not. It would have been a perfectly acceptable explanation to say, hey, listen, I don't know that I can play 6 or 7 matches on a gritty hardcourt surface right now, but I can play a couple sets indoors, and I look forward to playing the Netflix Slam. No one would have cared. It would have been like, oh, that's rational. So I don't know why all of a sudden we're up in arms about that now. As we project forward, I want your take on, because I know how Rafa was in the locker room. It feels like he never had a bad day, right? And even if he was having a bad day, it never got in the way of him being cordial, respectful. There are a lot of, kind of tour guys who aren't nearly as good as Rafa, who, I said this about Roger too back in the day, but, they'll switch their grip tapes out, regrip, and they'll leave something on the floor and just walk away, right? And it's like, it drives me absolutely crazy. They'll get a stretch from a trainer and get up and not say thank you and walk out. Like, it just drives me crazy. And it's been nice in tennis that 2 of your, top 3 stewards, including Novak, and Novak actually is very, he doesn't get enough credit for how friendly he is with people in and around the locker room as well. But it's nice to see that those guys reset the table on, hey, listen, I am one of the best players of all time. I am the favorite, one of the favorites every time I walk into a locker room, but there's also like common courtesy involved with the way that I go day to day. How was he viewed, digested, received from your seat with the media?
Oh my God. Well, not even just the media. No, I totally agree. And I'll give you 2 of my favorite stories. One of them is in Australia a few years ago. You always like to chat up the drivers, and sometimes they have good gossip. And I said, just, the years you've been doing this, who are the nicest guys you've dealt with? And the driver said, oh, I'd probably say Nadal and then Federer. Nadal and Federer, yeah. And I said, okay, what? Not the stars. I mean, anyone. No. I'm talking about anyone. Those were the 2 guys who were most courteous and asked them where they were from. Another favorite one was, I was supposed to talk to Nadal in 2008. He wins Wimbledon, remember, comes to the U.S. Open, and he's in the locker room, and this is back when the locker room was open. Wimbledon champion, hottest thing in tennis, ranked number 1. I think he'd won the gold in China at the Olympics. I mean, this guy owns the world, and he's in the middle of talking to me. He says, hold on. He sprints out the door. He's topless, and he sprints to the practice court. What the hell is going on here? He had practiced before talking to me. We had this appointment to speak, and he had forgotten he had left one of his bottles on the court. So he sits down, realizes he's left the bottle there, goes running out, grabs his bottle, throws it away, and then comes back and says, sorry, where were we? I realized I'd left the bottle.
Because he hadn't thrown it away, so he was in a panic about it.
He hadn't thrown it away. No, the other thing you hear is that whenever he plays events, when he's paid an appearance fee, he goes to China, they say this guy will absolutely bend over backwards he totally gets it, and he's very popular among fans, he's popular among his colleagues, but he also sort of gets the business and the politics of tennis, and when someone pays you an appearance fee, they expect you to shake hands. I mean, this guy, we all talk about Federer's dignity, we don't need to compare. You can say nice things about player A without denigrating anyone.
No,
but
you
I
can't,
just think,
John. Not on
exactly.
social media. You
Right.
You can't say a nice thing about anyone without it being a direct offense to someone else.
It's so obvious you're a homer. Ask Lindsey Vonn. I'll ask Lindsey Vonn how that went. But no. I mean, from day one, I did a piece on Nadal before he won the French. This guy's never played the French before. This is 20 years ago too. We're talking about his body, his injuries, his career. This guy, for a guy we all thought was going to burn himself out, it was going to be an injury case. 20 years is a nice run, but he was great when he was 18 years old and sitting there in the playing lounge and making eye contact and didn't speak much English. And he's great today. He's the guy never changed. And I can't imagine an athlete, much less a tennis player, who's sort of more highly regarded. And you said it. It's not because he's glib and clever and witty on Twitter. He just has this level of common courtesy that has never deserted him, even as he has gone from a teenage prospect to a guy probably worth $1 billion.
Yeah, I used to think I would hear his press conferences and I would kind of roll my eyes because it would be, a pre-press deal at Roland Garros, and he's playing some guy who's 80 in the world who, knows perfectly well that he's won, 87 matches in a row at Roland Garros, and he's like, well, the guy plays well. I don't know, anything can happen today. I'm going, bullshit, man. You know you're going to win this match, and then like time goes on, you get to know him a little bit better, and it's weird because you feel like Roger and Novak kind of deal from a place of confidence, even when things aren't going well, right? Like they kind of deal from a place of, I've been here before, my skill set is better, I'm going to make you do it over time. Whereas I feel like Rafa, and it's really endearing because I operated the same way, just not nearly as well or not nearly as long, but kind of dealt from a place of insecurity, right? Okay, I've won certain types of matches 400 times in my career, and 401, I'm like, oh, it could all be different this time. And it's an endearing quality. I used to think it was like, I don't know, 20% false humility, where it's like you're saying the right thing just because you don't want to be disrespectful. And then you get to know him and it's like, wait a minute, he hasn't missed that note in 15 years. That's a lot. That would be a lot of intent to present yourself a certain way. And then you see him behind the scenes and the way that he operated and the way that he treated people. And you go like, oh, okay, this guy is just who he is. And he is endearing, not because it's calculated or it's a talking point or it's, false humility. It's just because he is that way. He is that sort of human. And it was nice to see someone who is utterly dominant also be kind of scared of the next result. It made him relatable, especially to, someone like me who see these three guys as absolute superheroes. For me, he was the most relatable, because you could kind of see his struggle. You could see the inner dialogue. You could, when he told you, he was like, well, I don't know if I can win this year at Roland Garros. It's even money. It's like, dude, you've won it 13 times. Like, I'm going to go out on a limb. You're in with a shot, And so I've come to kind of know, respect, and I feel like get Rafa even more over time. And I said when I saw him for a quick 30 seconds, and it's as if no time had passed. He came over, gave a big hug. How are you? Are you happy? How old are your kids? I said, great. Congrats on your son. How is everything with you? He goes, I'm happy. I'm stressed. I don't know how this is going to end, but I'm generally settled and happy. And it was kind of that same tone. Nothing has changed. 1 Grand Slam or 22 Grand Slams, it's consistent. And that's kind of all you can ask of someone, right?
The dubits. You'd always talk about dubits. I always thought this was some like Spanish currency. Then you realize he was saying doubts. And this was someone fueled by doubt. And sometimes, you're right. You'd say, I'm playing Mike Hayden in the next round. I'm going to have to be 100%. He's a very, very talented player. If I'm not 100%.
Now we're just getting carried away because there's no fucking way I would be scared of playing Mike Hayden in anything that had to do with any general athleticism. Let's not get carried away. I couldn't set up a camera or audio, but that is a ridiculous comp, John Wertheim. You're losing credibility as a journalist.
Richard Gasquet is a very dangerous opponent. And then you look at the head-to-head record, he'd win like 2-2-2, and he'd come in and he'd have this dramatic sigh as though he just barely scored the knockout punch in the 10th round.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think so. This was a player fueled by doubts, and that you're right. I mean, it's a different. That's a real contrast to other players. Where Roger Federer did not have those sort of doubts, and it expressed itself not just in sort of the lines and the sandbagging and I'm lucky to win and I'm gonna have to be at my best, but also look at the way he practiced. I mean, he would have these 2.5 hour sessions. Federer would get out there and practice for 20 minutes. He'd be, his feet would be on the service line.
Oh, there's nothing more frustrating than consistently losing to someone and then watching them practice and not actually be concerned with the form in practice. And this is a side tangent, but then be like, oh, it'll be there on Monday when it needed to be. Him and Pete Sampras, the only two people that I've seen that kind of have removed that stress mechanism. So annoying.